Good afternoon. Welcome to our Good Practice Power Hour, your opportunity to hear pockets of good practice from across the Charter Network. My name is Alexia Rhodes. I'm the Learning Network Manager here at the Greater Manchester Good Employment Charter. The purpose of this webinar is for you to hear examples of good practice from other employers, and they'll provide you with enough key information that you may be able to adopt this yourself in your own organisation. We are joined today by two of our employers, Social and Howorth Air Technology, who are going to be sharing some of their fantastic practice around flexible work and engagement and voice. Some of you may have noticed that we did have an employer on the lineup who was due to speak about pay. Unfortunately, they've not been able to attend on this session. Just a bit of housekeeping from me about how to ask questions and things, and then we will kick off into our power hour. So as attendees, you can't see who else is attending. If you would like to ask questions, please do so throughout the webinar. There is a question tab at the bottom of your screen. Please continue to ask questions throughout. We'll go through all the questions at the end. You can ask them anonymously if you wish. Please do react to any of the slides. There's reactions buttons at the bottom. There's also, if you would like to speak at all at the end or to have your camera on, please let us know and we'll do that for you. But at the moment, everyone is in listen-only mode. So that is enough from me. I'm going to hand over to our employers. So I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who is John Quinton-Barber, the founder and CEO of Social, who's going to be telling us a bit about their flexible work practice. So I'll leave over to you, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexa, and good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. Just saying earlier, it's a bit like 2020 when it was webinar saturation. So it's good to be back on the webinar because we're doing, obviously, we're out in the real world again, aren't we? But it's great to be sat behind a computer to share some thoughts around social and our value, life happens, with you. So yes, next slide, please, Alexia. Just about us, really. We're a 10-year-old impact communications business. So you probably recognise Social as a public relations company or a marketing company. That's what we do and deliver. We're a proud member of the Good Employment Charter. We had a discussion about the Charter with Ian probably back in 2018, 2019, when it was, I think, of an idea. It wasn't a germ of an idea then. It was actually more formed of an idea. And we said, we'd love to get involved. It kind of resonated with me about the ambition of the Charter. So we've been a member and we've been a supporter for over 3 years, November, for about 12 to 13 months. And we're just proud of it. It really is something that we're, as a whole agency, are really delighted to be part of. Our headquarters are in Manchester. We've got offices in Liverpool, Leeds and London. So we're spread across the UK, but I'm personally from Leeds. I'm adopted Manc, been in Manchester for just 20 years now, and I'm proud of the fact that I now live in Manchester and the great city region that is, and all the great things that are happening in the city region. Just a bit of we are a 150 top agency, and we also work in the ESG space, so environmental social governance space, which is all about delivering social good, and we're number 9 in the UK of that, and we're profit for purpose. We're a B Corp, if you're familiar with a B Corp. So just thought I'd give you a bit of background about us and who we are. And just before we go on to the next slide, I just wanted to kind of say that one of my peers in the industry referred to me and Social as the kind of the Bono of the PR world, or the U2 of the PR world. And I never thought whether to take that as a compliment or not. But these days I take it as a compliment. And I'll come on why, because of our values and our policies as an agency and as a business. Sorry, next slide, please. So we really only have one value at Social, and that's called life happens. Next slide, please. And what is it? Basically, I set the business up in 2013. So set it up from nothing, and very entrepreneurial. And the priority was survival. So if there's anybody watching today or watching back who are in the space of entrepreneurship or setting a business up, the absolute priority is just to make it work. And I was going into this with my eyes wide open that it's going to be very difficult, but my eyes closed as well about the impact that I will have as a business owner as I grew the business. And we grew really quickly. We grew to about 15 colleagues by 2016. And I was very external facing. I was all about getting the business in and making sure we were delivering quality work for clients. And I was less focused, not intentionally, about the people around me. I just took it for granted that, you know, I'm paying them, and they've got a job and they're working for social. And some of my behaviours in the early days as an entrepreneur, when I look back, I wouldn't say they were brutal, but it was very much just about this is life. We've got to crack on. We've got to make this work. Then in 2016, two of my colleagues independently said to me in the same week, "John, can I take a day off?" So my grandparents' funeral was one colleague's grandma, one colleague's granddad had died, and it kind of like stopped me in the tracks and thought, wow. They're asking if they need to take a day off. They should just be able to take a day off. This is something really big. This is something that they are going through that in their life. And they should take a day off. And they're asking me for a day off. It kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. And that's when Life Happens was born. Next slide, please, Alexa. So, if anyone knows his character, I'm the grandson of a miner from Yorkshire. And this is Danny in the film Brastoff. And Brastoff, very quickly, is a film about the miners' strike and the pit closure back in the 80s. And Danny is a proud brass band conductor. All he cares about is his brass band getting to the Albert Hall and winning. That's all he cares about. He's not bothered about the fact that their lives, the miners who are playing the tuba and the trumpet, their lives are crumbling around them because their livelihoods are going, because the mines are being shut down. All Danny was bothered about was getting to the Albert Hall. And if you've seen this film, it's amazing, it's fantastic. And the last scene is they get to the Albert Hall. So this is Danny at the Albert Hall, and they've just won. And he stands there and he says this, and there's a swearing in it, so I apologise, but he says, "I thought that music mattered. But does it bollocks? It's people that matter." He came to realization, actually, it's the people, not the music. So that moment that hit me in 2016, business of course matters. We have to make it work, but it's the people that matter. And that's my moment. That's my defining moment. Next slide, please, Alexa. So what is Life Happens? Well, basically, if you work for social, whatever life throws at you outside of work, we have got your back. Next slide, please. And that means whatever the challenge you're facing, that takes priority. And Life Happens means we've got your back on full pay. Next slide, please. So, for example, things happen to us in our world, in our lives as people. We are people, we're human. So going to work and your washing machine breaks down, going to work and the dog's not well, or going to work and your child all of a sudden falls ill. That's a Life Happens moment. And thankfully, after the pandemic, most businesses now, thankfully, most, not all, are in the space of, that's fine, sort that out, that's good. So Life Happens for us is that, but it's also from the major stuff like personal or family illnesses, mental health challenges, or bereavement. And it means we look after our colleagues, whatever they're going through, on full pay. So, for example, we have had colleagues with perhaps illnesses or mental health challenges that maybe have lasted 2, 3, 4 months. And my mantra and our mantra is, go sort yourself out. We'll support you on full pay. Bereavement, if a colleague experiences bereavement, close family member, our response now is, you just tell us when you're going to come back. So the pressure of work is not on that person because they're going through something that life has thrown at them. And that's what Life Happens is about. You tell us, because if I was to tell them, come back in a week, 2 weeks, if we were to say, just crack on with it, that is not supporting the person, and that is not really supporting the business or the business ethos of social. So that really, in essence, is Life Happens. Next slide, please. So the implementation and impact, I mean, it's all based on trust and line managed support. We have as it hoped you'd expect, we've got good line management in the business where we have regular one-to-ones, regular coaching and feedback. And so we can kind of get an instinct of what's happening with our colleagues and how they are in their, obviously, their work lives and how they're performing, but also if there's anything happening in their personal life or outside of work. Then there's a real culture of openness with line manager, and we can support and help. And our colleagues genuinely know that we have their back, and it really makes for a happier and more settled place to work. We test this regularly. We do our own internal, questionnaires, and our research and our Net Promoter Score tells us that our colleagues feel supported and they feel that the business has their back, and there isn't that Sunday evening feeling running across the business where there's dread coming to social. And that's something we're really proud about, and that's a cultural thing that we want to keep going, and we want to make sure that continues way into the future of social. We haven't always got it right, and we've had to tweak things, and we've had to learn, but where we're at right now, because of life happens, is good. Is good experience amongst colleagues that they feel very much supported. And yes, there is an immediate hit to the bottom line. I won't lie. We're a small business. We're a business of about 35 people, and so if somebody has had a life happens moment and they're out of the business for 2 weeks, 2 months, or maybe 4 months, then we have to readjust as a business, and we have to pull together. But we do pull together, and that's a teamwork thing. We actually all support each other and get each other through it. It's often been said now by candidates that interview that they have noticed, or they've seen maybe something I blogged about, or they've heard from other colleagues or our clients, and it's often mentioned about the life happens ethos. And I'll be honest, it surprises me to hear that some businesses, and I hear this anecdotally, that some businesses that just don't get it. Not life happens, but just don't get the fact that we need to support and look after colleagues and their full well-being. And I hear stories still to this day about behaviours where it kind of frightens me, because it takes me back to 2016 where the most important thing to me was just survival and making money to make the business work. And so we've evolved life happens, not just from an ethos and a value, but obviously in the cost of living crisis, we now have an interest-free life happens loan scheme where confidentially, colleagues who are struggling, perhaps something in life has thrown a curveball where they need to access some money to pay for something that they need as a family. We have a life happens interest-free loan scheme, and that's for when life happens to them. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Right. Sorry, as you can probably tell, it's me managing the slides. It's a quirk with this platform. So yeah, apologies for my over-enthusiastic slide moving. Thank you so much, John, for sharing that. Please do put some questions in the chat. We'll go through all the questions at the end. I've certainly got some to ask John. But yeah, it's a fantastic policy, and it's obviously had such a huge positive impact on the employees in the organisation. So I'd like to now introduce our next speaker, who's Jim Liptrot, the Managing Director of Howorth Air Technology. Jim's going to talk to us a bit about their engagement and voice practice. So I'll hand over to you, Jim. Thank you.
Thanks, Alexia, and thanks, John, as well. And it's a real privilege for me to be on the same platform as John. Most people won't know that we go back to 2018, July 2018, actually, when we were both on the same alternative board, working as part of an invisible workforce for each other's company. So today I want to just talk to you about something that has become known actually globally now as the Howorth Way. But first of all, I want to give you a little bit of a background on Howorth. So I'm sure that most of you, if not all of you on this call, at some point would have either needed an operation or would have needed to be treated by prescription drugs. And certainly if you haven't, then I'm sure that your close friends or family will have been. I don't suppose any of you at any point have really stopped to think, who is it that provides the clean air solutions for the hospitals, the operating theatres, the drug manufacturers, right across the globe? Who is it that provides them? Well, the answer is Howorth Air Tech, and Howorth Air Tech was originally formed in 1858, and they were formed to basically improve the quality of air in cotton mills. A lot of the cotton mill workers were suffering, and legislation was brought out. So right from day one, 165 years ago, Howorth were in the business of changing lives. Next slide, please, Alexia. So Howorth believes very strongly that the three key ingredients of successful companies, and they are, as you can see on there, purpose, people and values. Now, we still have vision and mission statements, but the real strength of having a purpose knows no bounds. So, for example, I've talked about why Howorth was set up originally. If you roll the clock forward to the late 1950s, early 1960s, Professor Charnley up at Wrightington Hospital was developing the hip operation, the hip replacement operation. And what he was finding is that although his operations appeared to be successful, people were then, a fair percentage of people were getting infections, airborne infections into the wounds, and causing them to die, unfortunately. So he approached the then Howorth family because he knew that they were clean air engineers, and he asked them to develop an ultra clean operating theatre, because the only thing that he knew that everything else was clean, so he narrowed it down to being airborne infections that were affecting people's lives. And on a networking event a few years ago, I sat next to a lady, and she asked me what we did as a company. And I said we save lives, and I talked her through that process. And at the end, she said, "You know, Jim," she said, "when I was growing up, I grew up 2 streets away from Professor Charnley, and I heard him knocking the bones together in his garage as he perfected the hip operation. My first ever job was as a nurse at Wrightington Hospital, and every Monday morning, before you brought this ultra clean solution in, we had a death meeting on the ward because we discussed who was going to die after the operation. And sometimes they didn't see that until a long time later either. So these were just the initial ones. But she said to me, when you brought in that ultra clean solution, it was a game changer. So you go back to work and you tell people that you do change lives." In 2008, I came into the company. I'd accepted a job somewhere else. My first 25 years had been at British Aerospace, and my last ever job was overseeing the manufacture of high-tech tooling to produce the Eurofighter jet plane. It was a killing machine. I was very, very proud of working at British Aerospace. Fantastic organisation, gave me fantastic training. But when I walked in the operating theatre, it was our showroom. I couldn't work anywhere else. And I went against all my own values, and I turned down a job I'd already accepted because I needed to be part of Howorth. I'll go on to talk about the people and the values later, but Alexia, could you show the next slide, please? That's it. Thank you. So there's 2 sides to our business. We need to go. That's it. There's 2 sides to our business. There's the pharma side and medical or healthcare. In 2018, I'd become the managing director. I was last man standing, really. The company had been to hell and back. 2009. In 2008, I joined the company as operations manager. 2009, the company went through administration. In 2018, I was last man standing. 3 managing directors later, there was only me to be the MD. I asked the owner if he had his backing because he always believed it should be a salesman, and I'm not a salesman. And unlike John, my drug has always been people. I've never been money motivated at all. So I asked him if he had his backing because I knew he wouldn't understand my language. Middle of 2018, I was like a rabbit in the headlights. I'm trying to sort out a strategy. So I reached outside of the business to start building my invisible workforce. I joined the alternative board, which is where I met John, and we met up with other business owners every month, which gave me an insight to how business owners worked, because I was the managing director. I was and still am just an employee of the business, no more, no less, paid to do a different job. But I also had a mentor, got a mentor through an organisation called Be the Business, which was a government-backed initiative where directors from blue chip companies would come and support companies like me. And I was very sceptical because I didn't believe that people that I'd worked with at BAE were cut out to work in SME. But I was very lucky. I became mentored by a gentleman called David Miller, who for 30 years plus had been the commercial director at GSK Ulverston. And on my first trip up to GSK at Ulverston, he took me around and he said, that facility there, Jim, is where we use your isolators to produce some of our life-saving drugs. I can't take you in because there's a process running at the moment. So I just said to him, David, just as a matter of interest, how many people are treated with the drugs that are produced in one isolator? And he told me 1 million people. And on average, we were doing 30 isolators per annum, and that's growing. 30 million people per annum, 577,000 people a week being treated across the globe with drugs that are manufactured now with equipment. That's more than Old Trafford football ground full every day. And then when you move on to the medical side, again, we're currently servicing over 2,000 critically ventilated spaces. It's 2.5 million operations per annum, roughly. 48,000 operations a week. They're staggering figures. But now, just think about this. Multiply all those people by the number of people that want the patients to get better. If you're getting out of bed in the morning to come to work for Howorth for a job, you're in the wrong place. Everybody in Howorth has a responsibility. And that's the power of a purpose. Next slide, please, Alexia. So, we have great people at Howorth. When I left British Aerospace to work in SME and to try and show them a different way of leadership, I honestly thought I would never ever work with people who were technically gifted as the people I worked with at BAE. My last department was 150 strong, an average age of 28, and 90% of those people on further education. But when I came to Howorth, I realised that I was working with those sorts of people. But I needed to really focus on my drug, which is the development of people. And we have a very simple approach to that. We have to engage our people, then we develop them, and then we support them. So what do we mean by engagement to start with? Well, we started off in 2018 when we introduced the first ever external employee engagement survey. And I waited with bated breath, not to see what the results were, but to see how many people would respond. We immediately got over a 90% response. The marks weren't fantastic, but just the response told me I had a good level of engagement. And we continued to carry out those engagement surveys year on year. So 90% back in 2018 with an average engagement of 74%. So the way that engagement survey works is that there's a series of questions and they're rated 1 to 5, with 5 being best. So we had 74% when you looked across the average of those scores. The last 3 employment surveys we've had have fed back. Well, we've had 100% engagement, we've had 100% response, but we're now averaging 81% engagement. And one of those measures, I feel proud to work for Howorth and proud of the work that it does, is rated up at 90 to 94%. So that is not people that are being pushed. It's people that are being listened to. So we have regular briefs. So one of the things that never happened before I became MD, this company never had briefs. So I told them they would have regular briefs, and it's very difficult in Howorth because we've not got a room where I can bring everybody in together. So I offered them regular briefs, and they got those twice a year, but I didn't pin down a month, because if I pinned down a month and I missed it, I'd broken a promise. I can't break my promises. So they had regular briefs. And then we move into COVID. How do we communicate with everybody then? Well, we immediately went to a virtual platform where we gave them regular briefs, the monthly briefs actually, but we don't call them monthly briefs because I've had to cancel 2. And again, I would have brought my promise. So I have regular briefs, and they're broken down now into the first brief of a quarter, looks at the previous quarter and what's ahead. The second brief of the quarter is an interactive session. It's a topic that is close to the heart of people. It may be about how do we improve well-being, what are the benefits packages that would be useful to us, what can we do in the community. We might bring in an external company like Bolton Lads and Girls Club to talk about the work they do. And then we break up into the virtual breakout rooms, and we get feedback. And the following, the third brief of the quarter, we have a spotlight session. And again, the spotlight session might be on a day in the life of a project manager, or it may be a salesman, or it may be a department. But then we give feedback on the interactive session from the week before, for the month before. So that's just some of the engagement stuff. I can't go into it all. I genuinely haven't got time. But then we need to develop our people. So we make sure that everybody has a formal review every year, and they're not appraisals, they're not performance reviews, they're about development reviews. What will help the person, what will help the company. And at any point in time, we have over 30% of our people on some form of professional development. And that's not just academic, it's also practical training. So working with our external engagement expert to support them as they move into leadership roles, for example. My very first apprentice in 2008 had 1 foot out of the door when he arrived. He was messing about at college, so I got him, and I had a dad and lad discussion with him. I'm either going to double your salary, I'm going to sack you, what's it going to be? The good thing is he decided to double his salary. He listened to me, he worked with me, I worked with him, and he was very quickly flying. He went on to get his business degree, and just before COVID, I sat down with him, and in my office where I am now, he said to me, Jim, if you hadn't have come to Howorth, I'd have been in prison. Because the day that he spoke to me, I was in with a bad crowd, and my cousin is now doing time for murder, and that was the crowd I was in with. So I came to this company to save lives. We're all about changing lives now, but we've got to support the team as well. So we support them through giving them loads of mentoring with external mentors. We give them wellbeing support, which is, I know a lot of people are doing that, but we've got a wellbeing team that looks at seven different areas, such as career development. Purposely moved my slide on, Alexia. Sorry, just leave it there for now. So just on the development, where I'm up to engage, support, develop, support. So yeah, so on the support, we've got the wellbeing support that we give them external support, and certainly like John, if our people are struggling, they get massive support, and they all feel valued and know that they're valued, and they all know that they are a massive part of what we're achieving at Howorth. So that rolls me on to what I want to talk about now, which was the Howorth Way. I needed to give you the other background because the Howorth Way is it's a values framework that we decided to introduce in early 19. I'm very lucky that in towards the end of 2018, apart from the mentors I brought in, we also engaged with Ian Williams, who I know is on the call today. And Ian Williams is a marketing professional who is absolutely aligned with the thinking about the power of why and the importance of people and the importance of values. We went on, I was talking with the team of directors about, we've got a fantastic purpose, we've got great people, but we keep failing. So what's causing us to fail? It can only be us. It can only be down to our attitude. So how do we capture this? So in December 18, through the alternative board again, I was invited down to a presentation on something called the Barcelona Way. It was all about how Barcelona Football Club transformed the fortunes in the early noughties by, when they were struggling, instead of sacking the manager, they had a deep dive into the culture of the club. And they came up with 3 values, which was team first, hard work and humility. And they made it clear that if people didn't live those values, they wouldn't be with the club. And they were true to those values, and they moved some big names on. And to cut a long story short, for the next decade, they were the most successful club in Europe because they lived the Barcelona way. It was a eureka moment for me. Me and the other 2 directors came back, and the next day we pulled all the managers together, December 18, and we told them what we'd seen, and we asked them to go away and talk to their teams, listen to their teams, and come back to us a week later and tell us what they believed the 3 values for this business should be. And you can see the values probably behind me of integrity, collaboration and excellence. And they are the team's values. They are not my values. They're the team's values. And underneath those values, we have a set of behaviours. Alexia, could you show that, please? Thank you. So when this was launched originally, we had 3 levels. We had expected, desirable and aspirational. And we were starting from scratch, so we needed to start somewhere. And the behaviours are very simple statements that you can measure yourself against. Are you behaving in the way that you should be? And we launched, so we'd been to the Barcelona in 2018. And in February 19, we launched the very first iteration of the Howorth Way. It wasn't branded as it is now, but we launched it, and it was embraced straight away. No barriers, embraced straight away. Why? Well, 2 things, I think. One, because they knew that certainly reflected how the company was led under my own leadership, but also these were the people's values. They weren't mine. It was their creation. They'd had a direct input. Yes, there'll have been more behaviours, more values thrown in, but everybody had the say. That's why it was so clear. So this year, from day one, we made it clear that if you don't live the values, at some point you will not be with this business, either through your own choice or our choice. But actually, it will always be your own choice, because if you don't live the values, you're not staying. And it's really important that that message was out there, and we've lived by those values, and people have seen it. And I know that many people said they're doing a great job here, but they'll never address this problem, until we made the announcement that the US Inc. CEO had left the business. I didn't need to say anymore. It was crystal clear. If you don't live these values, you will not be with this business. So that's treating people with respect. It's doing the right things integrity-wise when people aren't looking. But this year, we decided to revamp it, to make it reflect the business that we are now. I'll talk about that in a minute. I just want to go back to October 19. We relaunched the brand of Howorth, thanks to Ian Williams. He brought it to life again by talking to the people. And at the IHEAM, or the Health Estates Exhibition in October 19, we launched the Howorth Way. We relaunched the brand of the business, and we re-engaged with people that hadn't worked with this company since 2009. Nearly 10 years, well, 10 years earlier, they'd walked away when they'd lost a lot of money with us. And the words were, boy, we're glad you're back. And we're glad you're back with that approach, because we don't want to work with a sales business. We want to work with a business that cares about the customers and the clients. So roll forward to this year. Why have we revamped it? And why do we call it leadership and team member? Because actually everybody in this business at some point will be leading. So leadership and team member applies to each and every one of us. At some points we're leading, at some points we're a team member, at some points we're both. But what's been the impact of bringing this in? Do you just want to So I'm going to go, there's a lot more to the impact, but let's look at the financial impact, because as an MD, if I've got a weakness, I don't look at the bottom line enough. I just know if we adopt this approach, the bottom line will take care of itself. So if you look at what happened 2009 into administration, between 2010 and 2017, that was one hell of a roller coaster period. Between 13 and 14, we actually lost £4 million. We should have gone under again, but the owner put his hand in his pocket and kept the business going. And there'll be different views about why he did that. He'd have lost a lot of money if he hadn't have done, but I still respect the fact he found that money. And in 2017, I decided I was leaving the business. I could no longer put up with what I was dealing with. And that led to the then MD leaving the business, and it led to me stepping in. And I put there that we're people focused. From day one, I talked about us being customer focused, but we're not, we're people focused. And the people then look after the business. If anybody thinks that this approach is pink and fluffy, if they think that it's soft, quite simply, they are wrong. It is the toughest regime I've ever worked in, but it's the most caring regime I've ever worked in as well. So when we won, as an example, when we won the first Good Employment Charter Awards earlier this year, I walked in the next day and Michelle, who's the cleaner, hugged me and said, "We did it for you, Jim." Final slide, please, Alexia. Thank you. It really is transformational change. Never in my wildest dreams did I expect us to be where we are today. But where we're going tomorrow, nobody will ever have dreamed of, because we're not stopping. We will live these values and nobody's getting in our way, and we'll help everybody, including our so-called competitors. If we can help them, we want to. Why? Because I know that they are full of good people. I want them to do well. I really do. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Jim. Yeah, it's such an inspirational story. And apologies, everyone. I think I'm awaiting my P45 as a slide deck technician. So yeah, apologies for that. I just want to open it up for some questions. I think there's some fantastic practices shared, and I'd really like to explore that. So the first one that we've got is for Jim. So Jim, do you use your values in the recruitment process at all?
Yes, we only recruit on values. 100%. We technical skills get you in the dressing room. Values and behaviours get you out on the pitch. Now, so basically, part of the interview process is to interview people against our value framework, but we also use the virtues of the ideal team player: humble, hungry, and smart. So if we don't see those virtues within the person in the process, we don't offer either. 2 out of 3 is not good enough.
And John, I've got one for you. In terms of your actual policy, what does the wording look like from kind of a practical perspective? Because I know that we've got a lot of HR managers on the call. So how does it look?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question, Alexia. We have in the induction a kind of whole set of slides around what life happens means and how you access it, but we've kept it fairly open, and that's not to be ambiguous, because we can't define a life happens moment. So it goes back to the slide what I said before. Life happens in small ways. So we get up in the morning and we're all set to go to work, and then all of a sudden the pet's not well or the child's not well, and it just means you have the flexibility at social to say, you know what, phone your line manager, this has just happened, and we understand. So we don't have kind of like a set handbook on life happens, and that's because we're a small business, because we can be nimble, and I recognise that we are a small business, and so it's quite easy for us to set the rules in that space. But in the induction, it's very clear that you're now working for social, so let's just let you understand that we've got your back. that you're an individual, you're human, and you're coming to work at social, and something is going to happen to you invariably in your life while you're at social, and we've got your back. And it's kind of like when you say that to somebody who comes in, I understand that you want kind of like a rule book, but actually when you don't have the rule book, because it engenders this peer support network where everyone understands that actually that, okay, John's not in today because, you know, his car's broken down and he's supposed to be at that meeting and it's really important he gets his car, then everyone pulls together and it works. And that's not me, that's not a get out of jail response. I like it. It's like, I wish in some ways we did have a handbook and be prescriptive. We have had other businesses ask us about it and talk to us about it. And I think there's an accountancy practice in Leeds that's got a life happens policy now, and they've got a written down policy. But for us, it's more about the flexibility of not having that, and people then fully understanding what it means and living it, and it's lived on trust.
Yeah, because I think from an HR perspective, they might think, well, how do you stop somebody from taking advantage of your generosity?
I think, and that's a really good point, and I've had this challenge, and you know, we do reflect on it, because we're a 35 strong business and we kind of know each other and we know who's in the business. We have never had one incident over the last, it's been in place now for 6-7 years, where somebody's taken the mick or somebody's kind of abused it. It hasn't happened, and I think that's because, you know, not just because, like Jim, you hire on values and you hire the right people, but I think because it's so intrinsic in the business that actually, if you did take the mick out of it, if you were, you know, if you were abusing it, A, it's going to be found out, but B, you wouldn't be part of social. It's not your, you know, you're the wrong person to be in the business. And so, like Jim said in his slides, you know, either, you know, you'd be asked to leave or you'd leave yourself. So it's, yeah. And I know it's perhaps frustrating that we don't have it kind of written down. And I do get it that other businesses who have got, you know, many more employees than us and different types of employees, and you know, it could work or wouldn't or may not work in them situations.
Thank you. So we've got another question. It's for both of you. So I'll go with you first, Jim. What effect did joining the Charter have on your employment practices?
I think genuinely our employment practices were aligned with the Good Employment Charter before I'd ever heard of you, to be honest. It was a discussion with Carol Holford initially, who started talking to me. The only thing we fell short of initially was that we hadn't documented that we were paying the real living wage. So again, if you turn the clock back way before, I'd not even heard of the real living wage. But one thing I did make sure is that, we made a statement that nobody were going to be on less than £10 an hour at the time. Now that in itself took us about the real living wage. I didn't publicise a lot of the stuff because, as I said early on, particularly in my first 12 months or so, I've got an owner that doesn't believe I'm the right person, and I've got a man in America that's stabbing me in the back. So to be treating people like that would seem obscene to them. I didn't, and as we moved forward, the one thing I didn't publicise was what we were doing on or document officially was what we were doing on the the real living wage. But I documented it then because we do pay the real living wage. We're committed to it. I put it in one of the board meetings, and that's it. It's documented, and we were absolutely committed to making sure that our people are supported and they have a value and they feel valued, and that you know, we know them. You know, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They need enough to make sure they're okay, and we want to make sure that's the case. But that's only one small part of it. So I actually got rid of the investors in people in one company because they got the plaque up there and they simply weren't doing it. So I said to the investors in people, you've devalued this award. When I've finished with this team, we will be investors in people. And to be perfectly honest, we invest in our people 100%. And the payoff is that the clients are getting a phenomenal service. I could talk all day about it, but being what it's done for me is it's allowed me to publicise using the Good Employment Charter as a real badge to say there's no option. If you are a good employer, you will achieve success. It's as simple as that. And we've got to spread that message. And I believe it should be going nationwide. And I accept that we'll not bring it in nationwide. But if we can bring it in pockets, then absolutely fantastic. So that's what it's done for me, being a member of the Good Employment Charter. It's give us that platform to really get that message out.
Fantastic, thank you. And John, I'm going to ask you the same question. What effect did joining the Charter have on your employment practices?
A lot, really a lot, to be honest, Lexi. I think, yes, you know, there's a natural home for social to be married into Good Employment Charter because we're about doing things the right way, but it's a framework for us. It keeps us our checks and balances. You know, we can't never get too complacent. We can never get too cocky. We can never be thinking that we've nailed it, because we haven't. One of the things I wanted to point to is that, you know, 1 million women a year leave the workplace because of the menopause, and that is scandalous. That's an outrage. And I was reading that in the Guardian, and for all sorts of reasons, I blogged about it because I'm passionate about the fact that everyone in our business or in the business world or employees should be treated equally and have equal potential, irrespective of what they may be going through. And the Good Employment Charter had, I call it serendipitously, the week after a whole webinar about the menopause at work. So, you know, tuned in, got the not just I, my colleagues and I tuned in, and we got the information. We created our menopause at work policy, not me, but it came from employees and colleagues. So for us, it's continually improving and continually improving about what we do. AI is coming in. AI is with us to stay. So what does AI mean for the future of work and employees and doing employment right? So we can never get too complacent. You know, we are living wage, we are doing all the right things, but there's things coming in that we continue changing. So the Charter just keeps us checks and balances, and Ian at the Charter will always keep me in check, the checks and balances. So never get too cocky or complacent.
Can I just come in on that? Because I think the other added thing, John, is actually meeting the other great companies and businesses it's great to network with people that are actually aligned. And then if every one of us is spreading the word out, that'll get bigger and bigger. So you're learning off not just what the Charter itself is doing structurally, but you're learning off each other. It's fantastic, you know. And Becky Martin visitors, I've met Becky a few times, but actually spending some time with her, I learned so much about her that's going to be so beneficial to us, another member of the Charter. So there's so many spin-offs, there really are.
Fantastic. Yeah, that peer-to-peer learning is invaluable. You can't really get it elsewhere. Somebody's just put, Karen's put, policies can make things too rigid. As an HR professional, I agree with you, John. If you have the right people in the right roles, it won't be an issue. So somebody's put, so Amanda's just asked you, Jim, how many employees does Howorth have, please?
Currently 135 and rising. One of the things I didn't tell you was that Corey, my man, lad that would have not been here perhaps, on the 1st of June this year emigrated to America for us to open up our new facility out in America, and that is not at the detriment of the UK. It will continue to grow the business. He's only 32. He's took his family out there, but yeah, 135 and rising. We've got plans to move to much bigger premises in the next 2 or 3 years. We cannot proactively go out now and sell farmer work because we've got too much. And the defining moment for farmer was when we turned down the biggest contract we'd ever been offered because they were bullying us into promising it too quickly. A contract that would have potentially put this business at risk. And it was just a nightmare. And they came back to us, asked us why we didn't want to work with them. We said, well, we don't work with bullies. So they became a partner. They gave us a job, 6 months extension, proper payment. This equipment was going to be put in place to make the most advanced cancer treatment in the world. We couldn't afford to be late. We couldn't afford to give them a promise we couldn't deliver on. We were actually the only supplier to deliver a £13 million contract into that facility on time. The only supplier across the world. And literally that drug is saving lives. it is curing cancer. So 135 and growing. Sorry, I went off on one there. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
But
That's a good
growing.
example. Fantastic. And that's, yeah, you said before about you don't work with bullies, and I know that you implement your values into your supply chain. I'm very passionate about that. I've just got one final question before we wrap up today. Jim, I saw on LinkedIn that Becky had done a post showing a picture of a jar of honey with a Howorth honey sticker on it. So could you please tell us a bit about that, please?
So yeah, so when we got the big contract, we needed new premises. We moved into, we were very lucky, very locally, some brand new premises were being built. And one of our young men is a beekeeper, and he asked us if we would mind if he brought 2 beehives up to Ravenlocks, the new facility. And we agreed wholeheartedly, but we also asked for first option to buy the honey at the going rate. So we buy all the honey that's produced out of those hives. We put them in jars, we badge them up as Howorth honey, and we give them away as gifts to people. And you know, the nice thing is 2 more of the lads at least have now become beekeepers in their own right. And it's just fantastic. It really is. It's a real talking point. And it's, if you like honey, you won't find any better honey. It's absolutely gorgeous. So yeah, that's where that came from. 300 pounds in weight of honey in 2022, 400 jars. We talked about supporting our staff as well. We're partners of an organisation called Rugby League Cares. We delivered 150 hours just through them of mental health training in 2022. It's an all-round effort, and the bees are a big part of it as well.
Fantastic, excellent. Right, I think that's all the questions that we have for today. So I just want to give you a huge thank you for speaking today and sharing your practice. It's great for us to be able to showcase all the wonderful things that you're doing. And again, the peer-to-peer learning, it's crucial. We'll be uploading a copy of this webinar onto our website over the next week or so, along with some information on John and Jim's practices. Please do connect with them if you'd like to learn more. We're a community, we support one another at the Charter. Thank you for your patience with my slide deck mishaps, but thank you for attending today's session. Our next one will be in November, and we hope to see you again soon. So thank you very much, everyone. Goodbye.